Okay, we are live. Sorry, guys.
Woohoo!
Hello, friends.
Technology.
Good God. Every every live stream, there's something. Anyway, how are y'all doing? Good to see y'all.
He likes it from the tap.
For if you're new here, I'm Allison, the Mighty Librarian.
And I'm Leah Vagabondia, also a librarian, not mighty.
No, she's just probably mightier than I am. You work in public library, so you're
That
way
just makes me
mightier than me.
That just
No.
makes me a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, public librarians definitely are gluttons for punishment. I don't like I thought like I would have worked anywhere. It just kind of worked out that I ended up in academic libraries, which was where I really wanted to be, turns out. But at the time I was military spouse, so I was just trying to get work experience wherever I could. I tried to be as versatile as possible, and it just life worked out this way. Hey, Cynthia. So, but like and our public library system, from what I've heard from the others, isn't nearly as colorful as some of the other systems that I've heard about. So, um, yeah, I don't think I could do public library.
I'm lucky because I get to mostly do back end stuff, so I don't have to deal with the public much, which is always my preference after
Oh
years in
yeah,
retail. So
yeah. I
it worked
mostly
out.
deal with people who want to be there. Like, well, most people in the
Exactly.
public library want to be there too. But like, it's when I'm teaching in a class, like people are paying money to be there. So like, it's not the same as teaching, like being a school librarian, which
Yeah,
those librarians, dear
that's a
God,
special
like
breed.
that is a special breed, and who like through the tough times of librarianship are
Hmm.
still school librarians. God bless you. Like, but anyway, so we were going to talk about the interview today that Kamala Harris had, a sit down interview with Bret Baier from Fox News. And now Bret Baier is supposed to be, and I say this with air quotes, supposed to be the more centrist anchor or whatever you want to call him. I think he's far from anything but centrist. He really went after her, and I thought she did really awesome. There were a lot of people, like, if you Google search, because I was looking for the interview because I didn't, I don't have Fox News. I don't have cable. I certainly don't subscribe to Fox News. I don't pay it. So it took a while for me to find the interview, and I watched it on 1.75 speed, so it wouldn't be as painfully long, even though it was only less than a half hour. But anyway, I digress. But I thought he was awful, just awful to her, and I thought she really got him, like, and you
He
even
was so
see this one
rude.
moment. I'll play a clip of it, in a little bit, but this moment where Brett gives this like grin where he even knows she has him. Um, but if you didn't get a chance to see the interview, I'm really squeamish to even like uh because we've been having so many technical issues. Oh damn. I tried to pin it before I closed out of it, but um
No, he was
okay.
so rude. He wouldn't let her finish a statement. He wouldn't let her answer the question. He just kept talking. He was just
It was cringy. He was cringy.
yeah.
It was like,
Yeah, that's the
and
word for it.
I watched an analysis by Don Lemon. He has his own like YouTube type show. And say what you will about Don Lemon, but I thought he did a really good analysis of what was wrong with Brett Baer. And he was even like, when it comes to people who are in high office, or, you know, you can have a contentious interview without being a dick. Now, he didn't say without being a dick. That's my editorial. But I
No, he
think
was a flat out dick.
he was a flat out dick. So, anyway, so the Washington Post has the whole interview in 60 seconds. And I think it is the perfect summary. If you had to fit the interview in 60 seconds, this is what it is. So I'm queuing it up. And I think it's just a really good analysis of it. So hopefully,
Fingers crossed.
fingers crossed.
I finish responding, please?
But
you have to let me finish.
Wait, let me start it over. I don't think it
We
was.
have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your
And-
Homeland Security Secretary said that
Well, no,
85%
I'm
of
not
apprehensions.
finished. I'm not finished.
Let me just finish. I'll get to the question. I promise you.
I was beginning to answer. May I finish responding,
But
please?
here- but this-
you have to let me finish.
Are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed.
Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening? Are
Walk
they
for
misguided, the
anyone.
50%?
Listen,
Are
let
they
me-
stupid? What
Oh,
is
God,
it?
I would never say that about the American people. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
All right.
Is your business drowning in paperwork?
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, he was so rude, like constantly interrupting her and constantly talking over her, not letting her answer the question, trying to insert his answer
Absolutely.
before she could even respond. It's like the worst. Like so confrontational from word one.
Yeah, and I thought, like, if you caught nothing of that interview, I think that minute of just like sparse clips really puts it, the biggest setting, the best parts of what went well, what may have not gone so well, and I don't know. I was kind of, if you also Google search, uh, sorry, I was queuing up the other clip. If you Google Kamala Harris interview or Fox News interview, so many outlets say not just like conservative ones either. Like a lot of outlets said that she didn't do that well in it. I think she did awesome, to be honest. Like I don't know what more they want from her, but
Right. Well,
like
and how is she was she supposed to yell back at him and like interrupt him back? Because then they just would have called her a bitch. You know, that's what they did to Hillary. If she was aggressive and spoke up, she was being shrill or she was being a nasty woman. And if she didn't, they said she was cowardly or not, you know. You
I
can't
think
win.
what he was looking for, and he said this of Kamala, which I think is rich because it seemed like he was trying to get a deplorables moment like Hillary from 2016. And he said that Kamala was looking for a viral moment. That's rich, Brett. Like, come on. Let's get real. You were trying so hard to get her to gaff, and she just
He was
and she
trying
didn't
to
take the
push her
bait
buttons.
either. But it's
Yeah,
like when
mad
women
kudos to
are
her for keeping her cool.
this is why I'm not in elected office, because
Same.
like I don't, I have a very thin skin, but two, I also have like a no bullshit, like I would have lost my shit, and you can't do that for all. Like you have to strategically lose your shit, like, and I would just be like, dude, you're being a douche and you know it, and that's not appropriate.
Well, and since she's known for that statement of "I'm still speaking" and that kind of thing, I'm not surprised that that's the way he went, trying to talk over her, trying to force her into making a strong statement like that. She put up
Yeah.
with way more than I expected her to.
Yeah, and she is, I think, she was very well prepared, and I think from her prosecutor days, I think she knows how to adjust her tone for juries and whatnot. Like, because not every case needs the same tone. Like sometimes you have to play Kate in a softer way. Sometimes you have to be aggressive. Sometimes you have to take a step back. So I think she's very good, and she seems to do best when she's attacked. Like
That's true.
like I think she really has her best moments when people are trying to come at her.
Well, and that's when most people are the most dangerous, is when they're feeling threatened, because you get a raw response. That's when people kind of let their guard down, are most dangerous. Rather than gaffing, that's when she's like, you know what? No, I'm smarter than you. I'm more experienced than you. I got this.
Yeah.
Like the way she went off at the end, beautiful.
Yeah, because he was really trying to, like, especially that line where he says, "Oh, you know what? Let me play that clip while I'm talking about what it is the section that's probably the most watched of the entire thing. I'm not going to play the whole, because I think it's the last like 10, 15 minutes.
Showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He professes to be a leader.
I was going to try to find the clip.
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Bret, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way.
So, yeah. And I love how she called him out. Because if he had played the full... No, if he had played the full exchange of that, if 30 more seconds, he would have started talking about the enemy within, or, you know, how everything that Bret Baier was trying to say Trump doesn't do, he was doing. And he was placating to his MAGA audience, like, because if he didn't go after her like that, then, and he was just a normal interviewer, they would.
That's always their excuse.
Then Cynthia had a really good comment. And it's true. Like, women are always, no matter what we do, we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. We're pushovers if we don't react. We're, you know, we're a bitch if we, you know, say, excuse me, I'm talking, when somebody's being rude. So, and that's just a fact of life. Like, You know,
Yeah.
it's not.
When
Oh no, go ahead.
no, all our lives, we were boys were told that they're aggressive and assertive and have a can-do attitude, and girls were told you're bossy and no one's going to like you if you're being a bitch. And it's like, okay, why is there a completely different standard here? It's leadership qualities when it's him doing it, but when I do it, no one's going to like you because you're being prissy or you're being emotional or you're being hysterical. And it's like,
Yeah, you're being over dramatic. That's the one that gets me. Over dramatic. You want to see fucking over dramatic? I'll show you over dramatic.
exactly.
And that's why I can't be in an elected office. I would be everybody's like best employee or volunteer. Like I got their opposition research. If it's on the internet, I'll find it. But like, the candidate, no, that's not.
No, it would be easy to provoke me because
Oh
when
yeah,
they say the
and
horrible things they say about transgender children or about immigrants or whatever, I would lose my mind and go off.
yeah, I would lose my shit, and I like my catchphrase would be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?"
Right.
Maybe that's what they need to hear. Like, but like Jasmine Crockett, she's like a boss bitch on like
Yes.
saying what the fuck is wrong with you without saying what the fuck is wrong with you.
I think that's the difference, is having the ability to tell someone off without them realizing just how badly you hurt them. You know?
Yeah.
Whereas my instinct would just to go, I'd go pure sailor, and that's not going to help. And you really have to go more like, smart girl. And I lose my smart girl when I'm angry, so it wouldn't help.
Yeah, I get I would say like definitely more F-bombs come out when I'm raging
Oh,
pissed.
yeah.
But like unconstructive arguments start creeping into my vocabulary. And like when you like I believe that an elected official and how I would operate is I want to be productive, and you don't get anywhere name calling. There's a quote that maybe Socrates said. Somebody really wise said that like once you start like name calling, you've already lost the debate. And that's really true,
Yeah,
because if you can't
stoop to that level,
if you resorted to ad hominem attacks, you just look stupid. And I don't want to say uneducated. That's not. You just look like you don't have, like, you look like you can't have a meaningful debate. And, obviously the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, Lauren Boebert, they're not looking to have a meaningful debate, obviously. But like when you're looking to have like an actual debate, name calling is not constructive. So.
well, and it's interesting because when Marjorie Taylor Greene says completely offensive things, when Lauren Boebert makes personal attacks and says terrible things, they're not calling her, the things that they would say about a Democrat woman doing those things. And so, like when MGT and Jasmine Crockett got into it, they were throwing a fit about Jasmine Crockett saying something back to MGT, but they weren't responding to the fact that MGT was being nasty. And it's like, come on, why is there a double standard? Because she's blonde? Like, come on.
Yeah, and like I mean, she was what people aren't admitting, because I refuse to believe that so many people did not understand the racist undertones of MPG's comments about Jasmine Crockett in that one incident.
Exactly. And that's on purpose. It's that dog whistle.
Yeah, but media knows about it, and I think what upsets me the most, or like maybe not upsets the right word, disappoints me about the media and makes my job 10 times harder teaching information literacy, is when they look at, I can be fairly objective in a lot, like I can really put a lot of my because I know what my biases are, I can objectively look at a lot of content. And if Fox News, I haven't seen this in a long time, to be honest, but like I would have no problem saying, I think he did ask some fair questions. I think MSNBC is often too soft on Democratic operatives, to be honest. Like, but like, you know, it's how to articulate this. Very few people can. I refuse to believe this many people can objectively look at that interview and still say Kamala handled it badly. And they're like, seriously, Google search this. You'll see, like, if it wasn't negative, it was neutral. Like, Harris doesn't move the needle with Fox News sit down. Like, it was, and it's just, there's a clear double standard. And I really think I have nothing, disclaimer, I have nothing to back this up. What I'm about to say, I have no evidence. I mean, a lot of you will agree with me, but I have no evidence. I really believe that the media, whether it's really progressive or kind of a Trump administration, thinking that it's going to matter. Like, the New York Times is fucked. If Trump hates the New York Times, Trump hates the Washington Post. There is nothing they can do that will. He hates CNN. There's nothing they can do.
Yeah, no matter how soft they go on him or how rough they go on her, it's not going to change his opinion. He's already made his decision.
He may allow certain anchors and journalists to continue their work, but as a network, he fully like Project 2025 says that they should pretty much dismantle a free press. And I know Trump really tried to do that in his first administration.
That's been his rally cry since the very beginning is fake news, low ratings, da-da-da. That's been his big thing on all of them. Anytime they criticize him or don't praise him, he wants to cancel them or say those things about them and demean their journalistic integrity. Mm-hmm. And to me, my response when someone says that isn't to placate them, it's to double down, you know, which is why I cannot be an elected official. But also, like, if right, like, if your thing at the Washington Post is that you called him out from day one and he's still doing the same shit and you continue to call him out, kudos, you did your job. But if you backed off because he was getting upset and was saying bad things about you, you're no longer doing your job as a news agency. You're placating. You're giving up your power freely, which is almost worse than letting it be taken away from you. You gave it away.
Yeah. And, I think the only journalist I still really respect, and I only because I haven't seen him let me down since this one interview, George Stephanopoulos, I really still respect him. He's thrown people off his show. He keeps going after him at, like, with Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace tried to discredit him by, he was just saying, how can you support a rapist when you yourself have been a victim of sexual assault? Mm-hmm. And she, like, tried to say that George Stephanopoulos was victimizing her, and it never took off because it was clearly, she was gaslighting the public. And it really upset me because victims of sexual assault, like, already have a hard time being believed, and no one with any level of relative intelligence could, listen to the interview, question, and think that George was being completely out of line. It was a fair question. And, like, it seemed like for 2 or 3 weeks she went after him over it, and nobody bid on it because it was a bullshit. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who felt like she was minimizing or giving the appearance of minimizing sexual assault in a way, because you're claiming that he's victimizing sexual assault victims when he clearly isn't. If you're going to be in public office, say one thing and then support someone who's been adjudicated as a rapist, the judge says he is a rapist, even though he wasn't criminally convicted, which I think is bullshit.
She's basically implying that his victims are less victimized than she was. So, you know what I mean? Like what happened to her is worse than what they claim happened to them because it happened to her. So him calling it out and saying, "How could you support someone who's been adjudicated as a rapist when you have been a victim?" minimized her. You know, it put her in the same camp as the people he victimized, and that's not going to play because that's not convenient for her storyline. And I think it's, yeah, Cynthia said she's such a drama queen anyway, so I'm not
She
surprised.
really
that
is.
she
She's
immediately
really
went
turned to be a disappointing. Like when she was first elected, first of all, she was pretty much elected because a district was carved out for her. They gerrymandered
that.
South Carolina. And then, like, at first she seemed fairly moderate. At first she spoke out against Trump and all of his bullshit, you know. And then all of a
Well, a lot of
sudden,
people did, but then they caved.
yeah, and then all of a sudden, like, she's taking a selfie in front of Trump Tower endorsing Trump. This was several years ago. You might all not remember that, but I do because I thought that because I think when was she elected? 2020? I think she was elected in 2020. I really thought that she might help steer the ship of the Republican Party. And no.
And there's a whole bunch of them that did that called him out before he was the nominee and then suddenly reversed on themselves. And it's like loyalty to the party to support the nominee doesn't discount the objections you made to them beforehand. And if they do, that tells me exactly who you are. You're not a person of principle. You do not stand by your policies and what you say. You're going to do what the party tells you to do. And that means I can't trust you.
Yeah. And, you know, like, I know a lot of people have strong feelings about Adam Kinzinger and Cheney. Like, I don't think they're necessarily heroes, but I do give them a lot of credit because contrary to what they, you know, contrary to, it's hard to do the right thing in those situations. If it was easy, everybody would do the right thing, but it's not easy to do the right thing. That's one thing I think parents don't really, and I've tried to really teach my daughter, it's hard to do the right things.
Yeah.
And I try to prepare her for that because it's easy to say, I would do this and I would do that. But if you're wondering what you'd do if you were in the 1930s in Nazi Germany,
right,
you're living it right now. You're doing it now. That's what you would have done.
Absolutely. And where'd it go?
Oh, Sheila, you remember that one? Okay, I'm not crazy.
Yeah, Amy said even when Trump loses, he will still have won in making the public wary of the media. And that's going to be a huge factor because, A, the information literacy, the media literacy, we have failed to teach that as a country, and it shows. And I would have liked when Kamala responded to his question about why does Trump still have this many people supporting him if he is such a bad person like you say. He tried to get her to call the American people dumb. That would have been a perfect opportunity for her to say, you know, the way your industry has been sane-washing him, conveniently cutting clips to show only a portion of the story, you know, all these things. The way you've undermined yourself would be amazing. We have crushes on you too, Derek. You know that. Every conference, all the librarians try to hit you up.
That's funny. But yeah,
I mean, of course, it goes back to the fairness doctrine. It always goes back to freaking Reagan, you know. But I don't understand. Like, do you remember learning about yellow journalism when you were in school, and being like, "Oh my God, how could they ever have gotten away with that?" Well, look at where we are now. You know.
You know what
that used to be
they don't do
at school as an anomaly.
You know what they don't do in school that, like, I was really surprised. And even my daughter went to a magnet school for computer science. It's like supposedly one of the best schools here. And she tested in early. And one thing that I didn't realize at the time, but now looking back on it, seeing my daughter go through K-12 education, the K-12 system I went through was way ahead of its time. Like, way ahead of its time. And I am they really taught us to be critical thinkers. Here's why. Because like every weekend, every Friday, we had to have a news article from the newspaper. Remember, the internet still wasn't invented yet. But we had to find a news
Back
article.
we rode our dinosaurs to school.
And yeah, uphill without shoes.
Both ways.
And like we had to read the article and we had to answer the who, what, when, where, why, and if there was a how. Teach us to look for the facts of the story, not just. But at that time too, the op-ed was the opposite of the editorial, and you knew exactly when it was opinion. Friggin' ruins everything. I mean, at least up until the internet, news or outlets are on the internet, like, still had in a paper the opposite. The editorial and the op-ed was distinguishable. And now it's
not
really not. It's not easy. I mean, some outlets put opinion or like that they categorize their article, like tag it. I guess it's more like a tag, but
not
very few of them do it at the top. And then like, who pays attention to that?
Yeah, we've degraded the media universe so much, and allowing them to continually state as fact what is clearly an opinion. And when I just came back from 2 conferences, almost back to back at public libraries largely, and in both there were people talking about teaching media literacy in public libraries, and A, people will not come to those programs. They don't think they need it. And B, when they do come, they will come intentionally because they're looking to be offended. They're looking for you to use a Trump article or something as a criticism. And it's like, listen, I'm similar to your age. I think I'm just slightly older than you. Like, back in the day, they taught us that journalism was who did what, when, and where, not the why. Maybe a little bit of background of, as a reminder, like if you're talking about Palestine, as a reminder, on October 7th this year, there was an attack, and then following that, this occurred, but not making those direct correlations, not placing blame, no opinion there. And we no longer have the capacity to recognize the difference between a clear fact, provable fact, and someone giving an opinion about that fact. And we're not separating them in the news the way we used to.
And a lot of people just don't care. People our age, a little older and even younger, they don't care what it is. Like, so like,
No.
One thing I've noticed I teach an elective. I teach one course that's of information literacy that's 1 credit, and it's a mini session, and it's required for that degree progression. Then I teach one elective that isn't required for anything. It's called That's Fake News. Sometimes you have to put a sexy title on it, and it's really popular because it's a sexy title. It's like, I do like interpretive dancing. Like when I teach it face to face, it's like you have to perform to keep it interesting, and that's why I much prefer to do online, because I swear face to face teaching, I don't know how I do all online for the most part, unless they specifically say, can you teach it face to face? And I'm like, oh, right. But
I have to be
anyway,
in the same room with these people. Gross.
Well, it's so draining. Like but anyway, my whole point in bringing those classes up is that even though I'm in a fairly blue area of Georgia, I'm surrounded by deep red. Like, I've really one of Georgia's biggest cities. I don't want to give away too much. You could all probably figure it out, but I don't want to give away too much information. But we're surrounded by ruby
librarian.
Yeah, right. And so a lot of students commute from some of these ruby red areas to the college. And one thing that to avoid the you're biased, I have a solution to that. When I tell them to look at news organizations, I don't tell them which ones are good and which ones are bad. I don't even pick the news organizations. I have a randomizer. It took me fucking ever to do this. But I found a randomizer and put all of the news organizations listed in All Sides Media. It's kind of like a Snopes, but it's a lot more academic in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And they rate only news organizations, not podcasts. Right? That's a whole other discussion. Why I don't think podcasts should be rated on a news scale, but I digress. But anyway, so that way I say pick 3 from the picker wheel, and why do you think this is better than the other? Like, which do you think is more, I tell them what quality journalism looks like, but then I say, which ones, tell me why these are better than the others, that the randomized. So you can't say I'm indoctrinating. That picker wheel is set to automatically pick for them.
Pick
So
anything. The other thing I heard someone doing is they start with a question that's not controversial. So something like the Loch Ness Monster, or, something
birds
like
aren't
that,
real.
where there has
I do birds aren't real for conspiracy theories.
exactly like something that people are just like, what? And then show how, here's an article that reads like, if you didn't know what this was about, if you just read this, had never heard this before, and you read this article, would you believe that this was true? And the way it's written, yes, you would. But here's all the places where there was a hint that this was biased,
Right.
and like that's a really powerful way to do it. So I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But now everything's controversial.
I have when I go into conspiracy theories, and they took this down because this guy, he never, until fairly recently, he never dropped out of character, and he created this movement called Birds Aren't Real.
Mm-hmm.
And he even has a merch store. It's if it flies, it spies. And some people, a few thousand people, actually believed his bullshit. But it was a conspiracy. He just kind of did it as a social experiment without ever dropping his, he pretended to really believe in it. And he had on his website this whole evidence of why birds aren't real. And but by evidence, he's like, check out Ted Cruz's emails proving birds aren't real. And it has this PDF, and it says from Ted Cruz to other members of the Senate, birds aren't real. It's obvious. You have to be a fucking idiot if you think that that's actual evidence. But
And yet,
perfect lesson plan to show how. All right,
what he did is
how
such a
would
great
we-
social science experiment.
yeah, and it's fun, and I was really surprised. The students really got into it, because the whole thing about conspiracy theories that are generated are how do you get people to believe it? You discredit experts, and we go through the steps. Okay, so birds aren't real. Who are we going to discredit? And students really start thinking about it, and okay, all right, all these counterclaims. Where are the counterclaims to show birds are real? All right, how as the conspiracy theory we get around those arguments? So it really gets them thinking about it without it being a total screaming match. And then,
Yeah.
but I still get asked, and I made a class video of this. I have yet to get yelled at on it, but I've been asked in face-to-face and in email, I've got MAGA family. How do I make them see the light? I'm like, you can't.
No.
It's a cult mindset.
It's like dealing with the person who has an addiction. Until they're willing to admit that they have a problem and that they need help resolving it, they're not going to. You can involuntarily commit them as many times as you want, but until the day they decide, I'm done with this, I'm going to make the changes, nothing's changing.
Yeah, I mean, I do have some, fairly, I guess if you really wanted to dig deep for something controversial, I tell them, ask them questions about what they believe. Because sometimes when you hear yourself answer something, you kind of wait a second. That doesn't sound right. And, but anyway, so getting back to kind of the ladies part of this, of the media and stuff, and how women are treated slightly differently in all sorts of information aspects. 2015 rolls around, and Trump has just dropped the fake news statement. Press or fake news. And fake news has been going on for millennia. It's not like Trump invented fake news. He just like made the phrase much more known. So I say to my boss at the time, who was a kind of a good old boy, our dean was. I mean, it was a cool dude for the most part, but Tim, like we're gonna have to get ahead of, libraries are really gonna have to like get on it to combat the fake news thing, because it's probably gonna get pretty awful. Because, and I started citing, like demonizing the press is usually the first step on the road to fascism. And he's like, Allison, you're being over dramatic. He actually kind of got pissed off at me for saying that. And I really wasn't like, I was just saying, I think, I was very like, oh, Lordy, we're going to have to probably start thinking about how to combat that. And he's acting like I went to him, Mark, oh my God, we gotta fake news. They're gonna come after us. Like, no, I was just in passing saying, that's gonna really make our jobs harder. So fast forward maybe a couple of years, and he's about ready to retire. He actually apologized to me for that statement. He's like, I don't know why that irked me so much, but man, you were right. Because now it's too late. And this is why I refuse to be a member of ALA, because they just sat by for years doing nothing but holding conferences. No, that's another.
Yeah, that's
huge,
right. That's a huge problem with the intellectual freedom problems, the book challenges we're having now, and with the news literacy and information literacy issues we're having now. Not to criticize my field, but I think we got complacent, and we should have really pushed those key skills in education, in society, like continually pushed the importance of those skills. I was told, now this is not how I was educated by any stretch. I went to public school in Texas, for God's sake. But I was always told that the point of education was to teach you how to think, not what to think. And that makes sense to me. And I think that's what happened when I went to college, and why college was so transformative for me was because I'd always sensed that a lot of it was crap, or at least was not the full story. I mean, we've talked about this before, but like I remember freshman English in college, we read a book about the American Japanese internment camps. I had never heard of them before. I was in honors history my entire life.
Really?
I was in honors history classes, honors English classes, the whole bit. Never heard about it, not once. And I was fucking pissed. I felt betrayed. I felt ashamed. I was angry, because this is huge. And if we covered up something like that, like that didn't even get a mention. Are you kidding me? We talked a lot about World War II. How did that never come up? And I think that's what happens when they say that people, when they say that people go to college and get indoctrinated. No, they're around other people. They're exposed to other ideas. They have to defend their own ideas. And then they realize, hey, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. Or, oh, wait, here's all this information I never saw before. And so it just, critical thinking needs to make a comeback.
Going back to like my K-12 days, as wonderful of an education that I received and how they really worked to teach us critical thinking, there definitely were some biased learnings that I had. Like, I learned a fairly balanced view of the Civil War, but it was definitely pro-North, way more pro-North than, so, I go to college in upstate New York, and I major in history, in American history specifically. And I take a class that's just the Civil War for an entire semester. And I learned how close the North was to losing the war for a variety of different reasons. And I learned how the North wasn't quite as racist as the South obviously, but the racism, I didn't think the North was some bastion of holiness. You know, I knew that, but I think I had a holier than thou assumption. And like, I'm from the North. We don't think those things. And obviously I'm being not literally, but, and I learned like how that just wasn't the case. Like, and even though it was at the same time a fairly neutral tone, it was definitely, and mind you, I'm still in New York going to school, going to college. And so, you know, college is meant to challenge your thinking. It's not meant to be like just cushion the pre-existing notions that you already had. And so like, I don't get how people get so angry about like these people think that 13, 14-year-olds should get married, but oh God, if they see the word kissing or sex in a book, woo, you know, like that, like what's wrong with you? Oh, and LB, and then in social studies in a library system, I just posted. Actually, this link is probably on my community posts. Library system in Texas moved a Native American collection on a tribe that's in the local Texas area from nonfiction to fiction. I'm just like, wow. And it's somebody's story. Like it's a Native American telling the story, like from primary, like diaries and oral traditions of the story of that tribe. So it's not like it's just like made up. Like, and I was just like, wow.
This hurts my head because, like, you want to know how 1930s Germany happened? This is how it happened. It's the dictator's playbook. Undermine the media, rewrite history as yourself as the victor. It's all the things. It's all of them. Like, I am horrified. And it's been this slippery slope we've just been letting happen and happen and happen. And because I love America, do not get me wrong, but I am going to criticize her. I apologize. No, I don't. I don't apologize. We gotta face that our ancestors, my ancestors in particular, came here because either we couldn't make a living where we were, which is the case of my family, or you had a lot of money and you wanted more shit, came over, people were already living there and said, I don't give a fuck, and just took it and did horrible, atrocious, terrible things to other human beings, raped the land, along with other things.
Gave blankets to the Native Americans that were infested with smallpox.
Knowingly. Like, until we face the history. Like, no, I did not personally do it. I was not personally there. My mother was not personally there. My father was not personally there. But I have ancestors who were absolutely involved in atrocious crap. I understand it was a different time. I understand there was a different moral. But it does not change the fact that it is wrong. And we can look back on it and say, that was bad. Like, that's not a criticism of me today. This took a lot of therapy for me to get to this point, kids. A lot of therapy. But it is not a reflection on me that my ancestors did terrible things. But failing to recognize that they did, that is a reflection to me. That's a problem. Because that's how we repeat it. That's how we justify doing it again. How we don't see the signs.
And it's disrespectful to not acknowledge, like, it's like, okay, you want to talk about, some states are trying to say slaves had benefits to slavery. You know, they learned on the job skills. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm sorry. Like, I'm sure they could have gotten professional development not being enslaved. Just saying. Like,
listen.
What is wrong? And it's you're gaslighting people.
Exactly.
Like, people
gaslighting.
We're not that removed from slavery. We're really not. Like, I did this count back. My great-grandmother's mother, so my great-great-grandmother probably knew slaves. I don't think my family was rich enough. Most of my family was in the North, first of all. definitely wasn't rich enough to own slaves. But like, we're really not that removed. Betty White
Not
passed
that
away
far.
a few years ago. Her grandmother probably was alive during slavery, to put in more context. Betty White's grandmother. So like, we're really not that far away.
It's
So
so
for
much
anybody to
closer.
sit there and say you cannot teach it like that, it makes people feel uncomfortable, you're gaslighting the African American community to fucking say, oh, it really wasn't that serious. Are you fucking kidding me? People were getting lynched in the 1920s. It wasn't that serious. Come on, get the fuck
For
out of here.
accusations. Yeah. They couldn't drink the same water. Do you remember when Mr. Rogers put his feet in the pool with the mailman who was black, and the world lost its mind because of the whole pool segregation thing? That was not that long ago, folks. It's water.
Really
You're
wasn't.
fine.
Like, it really wasn't.
Like, and now to think that, you're like, are you kidding me? And we have the nerve to judge other countries for things that they've done. We've all done terrible things. Ain't no question about that. But own your shit. Like rule one of therapy, own your shit. And we need to. And until we make peace with that, we ain't moving forward.
And like, we don't want to give out participation trophies. That heaven forbid a kid gets a trophy just for like joining Little League or whatever. But you're concerned that he might feel a little uncomfortable. Like,
right. He might know that his ancestors might have done something wrong.
I was just, when it was still acceptable to do that, like when people, like, at least in the 70s, people are like, this is fucked up. Like in the 20s, like, I wasn't trying to diminish any recent,
right.
You know what I'm saying? But like, you know, like, to gaslight an entire community of people into like, we don't need to talk about that part. It wasn't that, like, what?
And then to argue that they're using victimese, or affirmative action is just to make, like blah blah blah. Be like, do you understand the generational trauma? A, B, the fact that you won't admit what happened or you downplay what happened. That is a whole other level. And do not for 1 second act like they're not playing with a different deck, because we might have been poor as shit, and my dad may have been the son of sharecroppers who worked right along previously, not so distantly released slaves, freed slaves, but I still had more opportunities than the people my great grandparents sharecropped on the land with, just because the right people fucked, just because my skin is pale as shit. Because when I entered a store, no one said they're stealing. When me and a group of my friends were standing around, no one said there's a gang. Like, there was always that one little shred of privilege that I did have that they did not. Like, I know from working in retail, we would get job applications, and I worked with some pretty progressive people. We would get job applications, and they'd have the person's name and address on there. And this was in a town in the South that I will not name, but you knew where the hoods were. You just knew the names of the streets and so forth. They would see the name, and it would be probably an ethnic name, and they would see the address, and they would not call them in, even though they had the same qualifications as someone who lived in a different part of town. And I'm like, no, we're not doing this anymore. I'm cutting off the top of the resume, so you cannot see what school they went to, their name, or their address, because you can't claim that you don't discriminate if you never saw that shit in the first place.
Everybody has bias.
You can't help it. So let's just remove that. Like, you want to use AI for something useful? This would be useful. Here's 2 resumes. Compare them side by side, their skills, their education. Leave out all the things that identify their gender, their age, their race, all those factors, and then see who's qualified. Because that's what the human brain does not do. It still holds on to those segments. I hate to think how many amazing people we never even called for an interview because of that.
That's pretty twisted.
Yes.
That's twisted. And it was a Law and Order, I think it was SVU episode, and like, they say it's not based on true stories, but I remember at the time they had just busted this one family, or actually I think it was several families who were adopting Black children to basically make them slaves. I mean, they went to school, they, like that, they weren't like, but they were still trying to make slaves. Like, it doesn't matter if you're giving them like, and they were sleeping in the basement. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with people? Like, I want out of the timeline. How do I get to the other timeline?
Yeah, this timeline is bullshit. So this is why dogs are superior to humans. Welcome to my soapbox. A husky will play with a Malamute or any other. A dog, dog want to play, does not give a fuck. And we'll absolutely fuck it too, if we're going there, because of course we are. Why can't we be more like dogs? They don't see color. They don't see species. They don't see whatever. They just say, hey, there's somebody to play with. I'm gonna. It's fun.
I have
I mean, yeah,
3
they
female
fight and they do
dogs.
shit, but still.
I have 3 female dogs. Biscuit tries to hump Rosie. Like, hump all the freaking time. One day Rosie's gonna slap the shit out of her. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Biscuit. I am. I'm talking about you. He looked at me like, you're telling about me?
The judgment mother. How dare
Judging you. But, yeah, so, like, I mean, I really do. I'm just like, what? Wake up. Like, I'm sure I've done, like, things I'm not proud of. But the things that I've done that I'm not proud of are, like, a teeny fraction of compared to adopting a black child to make them a slave. Are you fucking out of your mind? Like, how do you wake up one day and say, you know what I'm going to do? What's wrong with you? Like, am I the only one who's just like, dear God, like, are we really still here in 2024, almost 2025? Like, how is this possible?
It's kind of miraculous that we are with the stupid crap, the inventive ways we find to marginalize and hold back and kill one another. It is a miracle that we're still here at this point. I'm not sure quite how that's happened, other than they need labor. That's probably about the capitalism. Sadly, what is killing us is probably also what's keeping us around.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my dogs are hilarious. Daisy's perfect. And they all look at me like, because I let Daisy is the only one who's allowed in the back of the house where like all the bedrooms are. It's like one of those ranch style built in.
You're not supposed to play favorites, mommy.
Well, I do. Daisy does not act a fool. Rosie and Biscuit, they act a fool. But anyway, so they act like she's gonna get special. I mean, Daisy has her own. I'm yelling, Daisy barking. She's got that in your ear, like, dear God, stop barking. The foster care system is so underfunded. Let me tell you something about Child Protective Services. So in Georgia, they have this law that says, like, if you have more than 5 unexcused absences, like, there start to become consequences. And if they miss so many have so many unexcused absences, then they get a letter from CPS saying, hey, you could better go to school. And then CPS can visit your home. You know how I know this? Because I got visited by CPS. The school fucking called CPS on me, okay? Because this is what happened. My daughter and I went to visit a friend in South Carolina. Goes to a neighbor's house who has kids. They're playing on a hammock. Turns out the tree's rotted, but it didn't look rotted, so they had a hammock on it. My daughter falls probably about 4 feet, lands on her back. So we were out a couple of days because she was very sore, and we were getting MRIs or CAT scans, or I forget which is which, but and we had to go to a doctor once a week to make sure. And then we went to a neurosurgeon specialist, which we don't have a pediatric neurosurgeon where I live, so we had to go to Atlanta, which was an hour-and-a-half drive. The previous year, we also had a lot more absences because the same friend, she trips and breaks her arm. Oh, I saw it happen too. Anyway, had to miss a bunch of school. So because her growth plate fractured, they had to like every week, once a week, we had to like take the cast off, X-ray it, put a new cast on to make sure it wasn't growing weird. If it was growing weird, then we'd have to get surgery on it. So anyway, fast forward to like I think this was in 4th grade. Mind you, I keep very detailed records when it comes to Emily's school. So they CPS calls me and says they need to come to my house because they want to file truancy charges on her because she admit. And I was like, what? So I made this whole portfolio of like, all the correspondences that I sent to the school with doctor's notes, matching receipts, like, and this is how I get petty. I put it both in electronic and paper form with dividers and a QR code to get from the paper version to the electronic. Like I get petty. The CPS lady was very nice. All gets worked out. She's like, I don't why can't this could have been cleared up with an email. And that the week before, my daughter had been absent because she'd been throwing up a lot. Turns out she got her period like a week later. So hormones, made total sense. And actually the CPS lady was like, she's getting her period. And makes complete, anyway. So why am I telling you all this story? I get my ass investigated for child neglect or truancy. But do you know how many children are showing up to school like visibly abused and nothing happens? And my kid has documented absences from freak accidents and, like broken arm. If it looks like it was due to child abuse, the doctor has to report it. So, like, it was a typical break from falling forward. It's like the most common way a kid breaks his arm. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like, of the depleted resources of, and you're coming to my ass when this could have just easily have been a phone call.
Meanwhile, I am a complete basic white bitch and watch murder porn constantly. And the child cases tear me up the most because with rare exception, there is file after file after file where people had reported concerns and CPS either did not investigate, closed the case, dropped the ball, put them back in their custody, blah, 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 etc. And you're like, like when I was little, I'm still clumsy as shit, but I was particularly clumsy when I was first learning to walk. And we just moved to a new town because we moved a lot. And I always had a bump on one side of my head or the other. I credit that for why I have such a large forehead. And somebody called CPS, because of course they did. New people in town, and their kids always got a bump on her head. So CPS shows up. I come toddling into the room, immediately crash my head into the coffee table, stand up, keep going. And the guy's like, you know what? We're done here. I'm like, my mom was horrified. She was crying. She was upset. She's calling her sister and her mom and all my aunts and stuff. Am I a bad mother? What am I doing wrong? And it's like, no, you have a clumsy kid. You're a clumsy person. She's a clumsy person. This happens. But meanwhile, right. Years later, we lived in a town and there was a girl across the street from us. God, I'll never forget her, and I hope she's okay. She had the creepiest dad on the planet. Like, this is the first human being that ever gave me like the heebies. Just the first time I met him.
Right.
His wife, he had abused her so much that she had brain damage. The mom. They had 2 young children, the daughter and the son. And those kids would stand outside our window. We had a big picture window by our dining room. Watch us eat. Because I know they weren't getting fed. Mom would make us share food because, of course. I went to visit them to take books over to her, I think. I can't remember. Something like that. They had her sleeping in a closet. It was disgusting. Filthy. The house was filthy. And then I couldn't figure out why she was constantly following me home. And the old lady that next door, she was always visiting her until, and I'm probably like, I was probably 9 or 10 at this point. I'm 9 or 10 and realizing something is wrong. Mom finally calls CPS and is like, something's wrong here. Like, I don't know if he's touching her, but she's really skittish. She does not want to be at the house. They're definitely not feeding them. They're definitely not watching them. They're definitely not clean. Da da da. CPS comes out, spends 5 minutes outside, never walks into the house, talks to him directly. That's it. Gets up and leaves. And when we get to talking to the old lady next door, she's like, I've been calling CPS on them weekly since the day that little girl was born, and they still haven't done anything. Like, if we weren't poor as shit, we would have taken those children. Like, that's just how bad it was. And to know that, like you're saying, all these resources going to investigating what was a very simple case, and yet here you have, obviously there's an issue. Obviously they need services at the very least, and nothing's happening. It's heartbreaking.
I have a very this is another ladies room episode with my daughter and her father, her biological father being a freaking monster. But that's another infuriating child protective services story, because when you call the police to report a crime against a child, a CPS is automatically, I don't know if it's like that everywhere. I guess it's state law here. And like the infuriating, fucked up handling of that case. Like, I thought it would be like SVU, like the cops would care and CPS would care. Like, just to give you a little highlight preview whenever we talk about this. Okay, so to get that child protective services report, I had to go to court because they kept motioning to squash the subpoena. Finally get the report. They were more concerned. Mind you, my daughter's 4 at this time. We have art easels and a playhouse in the back and a swing set. And she has all these kids robotics things and books, books galore, and a fridge full of food, in her own room with a full fucking size bed. And I got looked at weirdly because of how upset I was. Because I just found out something very terrible. And there were Legos on the floor. That's what they were upset about. The Legos were on the floor. That's crazy.
Have they ever been in a house with a kid before? Because I don't even
4-year-old.
have a kid. Yeah, I don't even have a kid, and there are toys all over my floor because the 5-year-old from upstairs visited for like an hour earlier today when I wasn't here. That's what kids do. They destroy homes. They throw toys everywhere.
She
That's what they
just
do.
dumped a tub of
Exactly.
a Lego set. And that was the concern. Legos. Like, I'm the weird one. Meanwhile, the kid has I had she was real young, so I had all sorts of activities and organized clear plastic drawer things and children's books galore on Monet and Picasso, and we have I subscribe to little passports where they send you stuff from different countries, talking about culture and whatnot. She loved getting it. So, and it kid has every fucking amenity, and they're worried about a pile of Legos she had just dumped before they got there.
Now, to be fair, Gottfried made a very good point. Stepping on a Lego is torture.
It is, but
but still, yeah. No, I get you. I totally get you. We'll
usually
talk
I
about
would
that
be the
another
one
time.
stepping on the Lego. Yeah, that's
Right.
a whole other ladies' night, our ladies' room.
One of our future topics is about mental health, and I have a friend who would like to share part of their story, but this is related. Horrible childhood, all the traumas you could imagine. Everybody knew what was going on. CPS called repeatedly, and CPS repeatedly listening to the parents who basically said, she's just a liar. And they never got her out of that situation. The fact that she's still alive is just a freaking miracle. But, and that she raised children very well herself after experiencing all that. But one of those countless cases, I wish it was the anomaly, but those countless cases of just the system completely failing. And in rural and small areas like this, your caseworker is likely to be someone who knows the family or is connected to them somehow. And there's always those certain names in the area that people just consider to be, well, they just live like that. You know what I'm talking about? I'm trying not to be too trashy here, but you know what I mean. Like, they just don't expect any
Yeah.
better for them. And so they really don't go to great effort to help them. And like, I've been up here about 12 years now. By year 2, I knew who those names were. Of, if somebody has these last names, they're not going to get the same level of help as someone else. Having worked in housing, we would see this as well. And it's like, you wonder why there's generational trauma. This is why. It's, you're not
Hard to
solving
break
it
a cycle.
yeah, you're not breaking the cycle. You're just letting it continue. And at some point, and what's supposed to happen, at least here, is that if a case isn't closed within a certain amount of time, it's supposed to be taken over by someone from out of the region, because then they don't have that same bias. It doesn't happen. They just close the file so that never happens. And so the case is never resolved. And like, I don't have a lot of friends here, but just of the few I do have that have experienced something like that, and it's not just here, it's everywhere. It's happened everywhere I've ever lived, but it's horrifying. Like, how is this even possible? And you and I are mandated reporters. And so, like,
Yeah.
it is so hard. Like, the other day, I won't name any names or anything, but the woman that lives upstairs has the 5-year-old that we call our granddaughter. And they were in a public place doing something, and she saw an interaction between a mom and a child. And she's telling me about it, and I'm like, you got to stop talking. I'm a mandated reporter. And if you tell me, if you keep talking, I'm going to have to ask you some details. And I'm going to have to report at some point, because what you're telling me is not okay. And you should, I'm going to tell you right now, you should report it because you're concerned. Like, you're absolutely right to be concerned, and you absolutely have the right to report, and you should, but you need to stop talking to me because I have to. And I don't want to have to say that, but I know what's going to happen. And I know that what happened to my friend is that every time CPS would come out, the beating she got the next day, the abuse she got following that visit was so much worse.
And
Even
that's
though
what's
she's
more
not the one that called.
traumatizing is
Exactly.
the not being believed than the actual. I mean, obviously the abuse is very awful, but like what scars a person, because I've heard so many stories of that kind of abuse that like um what really does the most damage is when you tell somebody, because you're supposed to tell somebody and they aren't believed by this person that they tell. And that's why this is a whole other we're getting into a new episode, but like this is why I have a real issue with demonizing librarians and teachers as pedophiles and groomers, because that's teaching the public who the wrong people to look at. Because children, if they're going to be abused sexually, they're most likely sexually abused by someone they know, family member,
And
coach,
physically
pastor.
and verbally abused as well.
Yes. So by elected officials, by organizations like Moms for Liberty, promoting that librarians and teachers are groomers and pedophiles and want these awful books in libraries so that they can give your child a sex change while you're not around. Like, schools have the budget to give your kid a sex. They can't even buy copy paper, and you think they're just gonna randomly give your kid a? I digress. But like, it's teaching, and so
Right, they
when
don't
a
have
kid
time to teach
discloses,
the classic stuff they're supposed to teach. They certainly don't have time to teach about transgenderism and a gay agenda.
yeah, like, so I just when a child does disclose, they're not believed because he would never do that. It's the teachers and librarians that must be doing this. Like, it's just awful. We had made so much progress in Georgia, at least, where younger students were taught about bad touch and who's mostly responsible for bad touching. Certainly not all, but most cases, is somebody the kid will.
And that's why, and we've talked about this before. If someone tells you that something is happening to them, your first instinct shouldn't be to doubt it. It should be to believe them. And I mean, I know that there are false accusations made. I know. But I also know that the percentage of cases that are never reported and that nothing ever happens to help those people is far higher. And I'll take a couple of false reports if it means that
right.
people who legitimately need help got help. And we have the exact opposite happening, is people who are telling, they're finding it within themselves to share this horrible thing that's happened to them. They're trusting someone else with that vulnerable information, and they are further victimized by the system, by the people who are supposed to love them, by being doubted and everything. And it does absolutely incredible damage to them forever.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're about to run out of time. I did want to mention briefly that early voting has started in several states, and oh my goodness, are the record-breaking numbers coming out of Georgia and several other states. There are a lot of concerns about Western North Carolina because a lot of their polling places have washed away, or they're not sure what they're going to use in the aftermath of Helene. So there's a lot of question there. And as we always say, make sure you check your voter registration, check it early and often, because they're doing some
Check your
shady
ballots
shit.
that they've been accepted, because when if you're doing mail-in ballots, they scan at every point of, like, when the post office collects it, or whoever collects it, they scan it. And like when they open the first envelope, they scan the second envelope. It's like, so make sure it was accepted. Some states allow curing, which just means they allow you to fix your ballot. Pennsylvania, I think it's by county if they let you cure or not.
Yes. Yeah, the Commonwealth states, for the large part, leave that up to the county level. And we just had an incident in my county that I won't mention the name of, but where they called basically a special meeting yesterday on the fly, and the 3 commissioners voted 2-1 to change to a non-curing county. And I just had it up, exactly what it said. They're changing the reporting from pending to canceled, and they are changing officially to permanently a non-curing county. The only good thing is they did vote that if a provisional ballot was marked as canceled, the person could come in, and if everything else was cast properly, they would count the vote. But that's going to throw out a whole bunch of legitimate votes for stupid reasons.
Yeah, make sure you sign everything correctly. In a lot of swing states, in a lot of swing states like Georgia's mail-in. I've never mailed in a ballot in Georgia. This is all from what I heard. Like, whoa, dog, stop that! She's like pushing the table that my laptop's on. Like, you have to sign the actual ballot, and then you have to sign like the outside of the inner envelope, and then some have an outer envelope, and just make sure everything's signed, dated, everything's filled out, double check, triple check, get a second set of eyes, because they are literally looking for any reason.
Yes.
Especially if you're a Democrat.
Right. And I'm hearing, so here in Pennsylvania, we had really wet weather in the wake. We got the residuals from those storms, and ballots that they had mailed out to the voters had gotten, the moisture had caused the envelopes to stick together, meaning that they weren't going to be able to submit their ballot because it was going to have already damaged the envelope. They weren't going to be able to open the envelope to put it in and then reseal it. You know what I mean? And here they allowed you to go to your local election commission and get a new envelope and everything. But there's going to be a lot of people that don't have the transportation to do that, don't know they can do that, etc.
Vote riders take you. They often pay for you to get, like, I think to register in most states you have to have an ID. But like, if let's say you lose your ID, or your state's being a douche, like, they pay for rides. Some states don't allow organizations to do it. So just check your options. Or even, hit me up, hit Leah up. If we don't know the answer, we're pretty good at finding out information. We might be. There's lots of, I will, in the description below, Rosie, you're killing me. I'll put the ActiVote, a bunch of different organizations where you can look up contact information for offices. The Harris campaign has a line you can text for questions. So,
nice.
Like there's
and the Harris HQ Discord is rad.
Yeah, the Harris HQ Discord, so rad. in my Stop Project 2025, when I didn't have time to add everything in the description, I'll have my Stop Project 2025 LibGuide that has like tons of information on voting, as well as about Project 2025, obviously. But you know, I put a lot of the dates for when registration or mail-in ballots. I put that on the top so you can find it a little bit easier. And
Yeah, definitely check
hopefully-
and see what your state's registration deadline is. And you may think there's a lot of states that have done a lot of purges. Some of it's going to courts, but it's not going to be done in time. So check to make sure you haven't been purged from a roll and so forth.
Yeah.
Get it corrected.
And
tell your friends, tell your
like,
mama.
yeah. Also, if you're experiencing bullshit at your polls, let the DNC know. See, that's the bark. It gets in your ear. That's Daisy.
Hi, Daisy.
You know, like in the Rosie, come on. Contact the DNC because they have specific lines dedicated. IWillVote.com has a line you can text. I'm sure that the DNC has so many lawyers, especially in the swing states, particularly in Georgia and Pennsylvania, because they like to pull some bullshit here.
Yep.
But they're ready to fight for this election and to fight bullshit. Good news, electoral win in Georgia. The judge threw out the ability. The election commission said that everything has to be hand counted. Nope. Judge says it's too late, too little, too late. Can't do that. So win for democracy.
Yep.
Sorry, guys. Oh.
And get involved however you can, even if it's just talking to a couple of other people to see if they've checked their registration, if they've made a voting plan, etc. At the very least, just share good information on how to find information. You know, if you share IWillVote.com or your state's Department of State should be the ones that handle elections. Their website should have all the information that's state specific on it. Just sharing things like that can make a big difference. But talk to
or if you don't send. I don't have a huge audience. Speaking of which, we're trying to make it to 2,000 subscribers. So subscribe, share. We're almost there. So all those stuff. I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Like, subscribe, get to 2,000.
No, what about voting? I was gonna say something about. Anyway, if you're experiencing some bullshit, Georgia, yeah. So it was the same judge that is doing the Fannie Willis case too. So he's a conservative judge, might have been appointed by Trump too. I don't remember. Definitely a Republican. So
That makes me happy.
I mean, there's a lot of bullshit they're trying to pull in Georgia, but there's a lot of people in Georgia, even Republicans, who are like, not today, Satan. Like,
That's the thing. We're having to fight so hard against stupid shit.
yeah.
It's like, our voting system's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. Mistakes happen, abuses happen, but they've proven again and again that it's a very small number. But there are so many laws in place, gerrymandering, making it harder to vote, ID laws, etc., etc. They're doing all these things to make it harder anyway. We already have incredibly low turnout. Like, the percentage of people that vote consistently is appalling. Like, don't make it harder for people to be involved. We already can't get them involved. Don't make it harder. That's stupid. Like, if your ideas, I'm sorry, broken record, but if your ideas are so unpopular that you have to trick people into not voting, you know that you don't deserve to win. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's really sad that that's how low some have fallen.
If you can't you can't win outright, you can only win by cheating, right? Boy.
Yeah, and I
And
don't
remember,
understand why they
every
insist on all of us. All of us, if you're like devoutly Christian, then go be devoutly Christian, or whatever religion, like, why do you feel the need for like to get involved in everybody else's life?
Yeah, do your
Like,
thing.
forced
But we
faith
all think it's
isn't
mine.
faith. Like, forced faith isn't faith. It's like that's quite the opposite.
Yep.
No, Kemp and Raffensperger are not our friends, but they also are not MAGA's friend either. And they both are on the kill list. But let me put it to you that like the state Georgia politics are so odd, and I mean that for the South. That like Georgia's considered the deep South, but we're like kind of an anomaly of different contradictions here. So like, there's a lot of different factors, but like, let's put it to you this way: Kemp and Raffensperger were demonized by Trump in the midterms. Both won their primaries. They were both challenged. Both won their primaries. Both won re-election. And usually, when Donald Trump endorses the other candidate, MAGA follows. And in this case, even Democrats
Did not work.
Voted in the Republican primary, because in Georgia you can choose your ballot. You don't have to be a registered Republican to vote in the Republican primary, which I bet they changed soon. But anyway, they both won handsomely their re-election campaigns. So MAGA is definitely here. It's not as pervasive as in other states. I mean, just look at their re-election, but they're still not friend stuff. You know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think they recognized that they could go down in history a couple of different ways, and they chose to at least go down on the side of ethics. So bless them for that. It doesn't mean I agree with the whole policy, but I do appreciate them for doing their jobs. So.
Yeah, I do. I think Cynthia had said, Liz can stand on deck, but you can't steer the ship. Like,
Right.
And even though they're not endorsing, I know that they're voting for Kamala. They're not going to say it. They're going to say, oh, we're writing in a different name, or they won't say anything at all. We both know they're voting for Kamala. And because A, they're both on Trump's killer list, so it's probably just pure vindictive bullshit. But B, like, they know Trump is crazy as fuck. Like, that shit off the wall. And, I mean, if we're in the bizarre. If you told me
Bizarre world.
in 2004 that asshole would be endorsing a progressive, who people consider a progressive, I would have been like, you're fucking nuts, dude. There's no way that dude's ever gonna. And here we are in the weird timeline. So if he can publicly say he's voting for Kamala, if you're on the kill list, your career in Republican politics is over. Like Paul Ryan, like just endorse Kamala and give the permission structure. Like you're done in politics. You're not getting elected as a Republican anytime soon. Mitt Romney, I don't know what he thinks like he's doing, but I still want to have Republican influence. Dude, first of all, you're almost 80 years old. Second, you're not respected now. Why all of a sudden are they going to respect you like next month? Like, dude, like he's probably preparing to leave the country just in case Trump does win. It's like, dude, you're already in deep. Just go in one more foot deeper. Like, you ain't saving yourself. And he's voting for Kamala. You know it. Like, so.
That's kind of the beauty of it too, though, is, and I've noticed a lot of the women's political groups I follow, they're making Post-it notes or stickers to put in bathroom stalls that tell women that your vote is private, so you vote how you want to. And that's really important. But you mentioned this before. MAGA may be loud and vocal and get a lot of press, but it's not as many people as it once was, and it's not as many people as they're leading us to believe it is. I mean, look at his rallies; they're half empty. They just pack them all in the center to make it look good. And I think
Tony
a
made
lot
a
of people
point.
behind closed doors are going to vote for her, for Kamala, and they may say they voted for Trump and they may feign outrage, but I don't think as many as he thinks.
Yeah, Tony made a point that um, they're kind of doing what they did in the whole red wave of 2022. That was like this little drip, of, you know.
Yep.
And I think, knock on wood, it just seems like I just can't believe we're this neck and neck. Like, I just don't believe it. I'm sorry. Like, I can't. Like, if it turns out that, you know, like, this is a much more contentious. I mean, that's not right. If it's a lot, if it's as close, if it turns out as close as the polls say, fine, I'll eat crow. But I really don't think it's. I think it's going to be a lot more. A lot. I don't think the polls are right. And there's one poll that's considered the creme de la creme and actually predicted that Clinton would lose and was in trouble in August of 2016. I forgot the name of it, but it's a woman who does the Iowa poll. She does an Iowa poll that like, and she does it specifically in like August. And the way she does it is considered like most accurate litmus test of Iowa. But Kamala's not going to win Iowa. But she's within margin of error of Trump in Iowa. So what I'm getting at is Trump's in trouble. That's a litmus, like Iowa's a litmus test for her. And like, she explained why, I don't remember why, but if Trump is having a hard time in Iowa, then, you know, it's, you know, stay positive is what I'm saying. Stay positive.
I'm hoping the numbers are absolutely outrageous and undeniable, and it's unlikely, but it would delight me to no end if every state turned blue. That would it would give me the giddies. It would bring me the most happiness I've ever had in my life. Sorry, Derek. And it would be just amazing.
It would be. Real quick, a unfrosted Pop-Tart has a better personality than JD Vance. Like, the unfrosted ones suck, and you know it. Like,
a stale unfrosted Pop-Tart.
A stale unfrosted Pop-Tart has a better personality.
And more human-like qualities.
Right? Yeah. So, I just, you know, I don't want to sound like one of those, like, poll deniers, but it seems like every election cycle, we're like, oh my God, the polls. And since 2016, the polls have been really not accurate at all.
Well, they're having a big
Simon
issue with
Rosenberg,
polls because...
Simon Rosenberg was one of the few people that predicted that 2022 wouldn't be a red wave, because it takes a lot more work to do this. But he also looks at unlikely voters, and he takes that data matched with like other data and actually gets a better sampling. So he predicted that he didn't predict how well they ended up doing, but he's like, it's not going to be a big, and everyone was like, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. And sure enough, he was the only one who was right. So,
yeah.
Oh, dogs. All right. With that, we should probably get going. So, all right,
you
friends, like, subscribe, share. Daisy says hello. We will see you next week. Okay. Bye, guys.
Peace.